Reading from the Torah. Today we're looking at Leviticus 10 and 11. And if you're following along with us on the Bible Projects reading plan on Youversion or Bible.com, there's a really good video devotion talking about the idea of holiness. And that's one of the things that's really important here. And the idea that holiness is about, being pure, not just morally, but sometimes it's ritually pure, and there's a reason for that. And so I really encourage you guys to look at that. It explains it pretty well, and so and that has to do with what we're talking about in today's two chapters. Start at Leviticus 10, start at verse 1. Then Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, each took his fire pan and put fire in it, set incense on it, and presented strange fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them to do. So the fire went out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, so that they died before the Lord. Moses then said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke among the one close to me. I will show myself holy, and in the presence of all people I will be honored." So Aaron kept silent. Moses then called to Mishael and Elzaphan, the sons of Uzziel, Aaron's uncle, and said to them, "Come near, carry your brothers away from the front of the sanctuary to a place outside the camp." So they came near, and they carried them away in their tunics to a place outside the camp, just as Moses had spoken. Then Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his other two sons, "Do not dishevel your heads, and do not tear your garments, so that you do not die, and so that the wrath does not come on the whole congregation. Your brothers, all the house of Israel, are to mourn the burning which the Lord has caused. But you must not go out from the entrance of the meeting tent, lest you die, for the Lord's anointing oil is on you." So they acted according to the word of Moses. Then the Lord spoke to Aaron, "Do not drink wine or strong drink, you and your sons with you, when you enter into the tent of meeting, so that you do not die, which is a perpetual statute throughout your generations, as well as to distinguish between the holy and the common, and between the unclean and the clean, and to teach the Israelites all the statutes that the Lord has spoken to them through Moses." Then Moses spoke to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his remaining sons, "Take the grain offering which remains from the gifts of the Lord and eat it unleavened beside the altar, for it is most holy. You must eat it in a holy place, because it is your allotted portion, and the allotted portion of your sons from the gifts of the Lord, for this is what I have been commanded. Also, the breast of the wave offering and the thigh contribution offering you must eat in a ceremonial clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with you, for they have been given as your allotment, and the allotted portion of your sons for the peace offerings of the sacrifices of the Israelites. The thigh of the contribution offering and the breast of the wave offering they must bring in addition to the gifts of the fat parts, to wave them as a wave offering before the Lord, and it will belong to you and your sons with you for a perpetual statute, just as the Lord has commanded it. Later, Moses diligently sought diligently for the sin offering male goat, but it had actually been burnt. So he became angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons, saying, "Why did you not eat the sin offering of the sanctuary? For it is most holy, and he gave it to you to bear the iniquity of the congregation, to make atonement on their behalf before the Lord. See here, its blood was not brought into the holy place within. You should have certainly eaten it in the sanctuary, just as I commanded you." But Aaron said to Moses, "See here, just today they presented their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord, and such things as these have happened to me. If I had eaten the sin offering today, would the Lord have been pleased?" When Moses heard this explanation, he was satisfied. Chapter 11. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Tell the Israelites, this is the kind of creature you may eat from all the animals that are on the land. You may eat any among the animals that has a divided hoof. The hooves are completely split in two, and that also chews the cud. However, you must not eat These from among those that chew the cud and have divided hooves. The camel is unclean to you, because it chews its cud, even though its hoof is not divided. The rock badger is unclean to you, because it chews its cud, even though its hoof is not divided. The hare is unclean to you, because it chews its cud, even though its hoof is not divided. The pig is unclean to you, because its hoof is divided. The hoof is completely split in two, even though it does not chew its cud. You must not eat from their meat, and you must not touch their carcasses. They are unclean to you. These you can eat from all the creatures that are in the water. Any creatures in the water that have both fin and scales, whether in the sea or in the stream, you may eat, but any creatures that do not have both fins and scales, whether in the sea or in the streams, from all the swarming things in the water, from all the living creatures that are in the water, are detestable to you. Since they are detestable to you, you must not eat their meat, and their carcasses you must detest. Any creature in the water that does not have both fin and scales is detestable to you. These these you are to detest from among the birds. They must not be eaten, because they are detestable. The griffin vulture, the bearded goat vulture, the black vulture, the kite, the buzzard of any kind, and every kind of crow, the eagle owl, the short-eared owl, the long-eared owl, the hawk of any kind, the little owl, the cormorant, the screech owl, and the white owl, the scops owl, the osprey, the stork, the heron of any kind, the hoopie, and the bat. Every winged swarming thing that walks on all fours is detestable to you. However, you may eat from all the winged swarming things that walk on all fours, which have jointed legs, to hop on and to land. These you may eat from them. Locusts of any kind, the bald locust of any kind, cricket of any kind, grasshoppers of any kind. But any other winged swarming things that has four legs is detestable to you. By these you defile yourself. If anyone touches their carcasses, um, anyone who touches their carcasses will be unclean until evening. Anyone who carries their carcasses must wash his clothes and be unclean till evening. All the animals that divide the hoof but is not completely split in two and do not chew the cud are unclean to you. Anyone who touches them becomes unclean. All animals that walk on their paws among all the creatures that walk on all four are unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcasses will be unclean until evening. The one who carries their carcasses must wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. Now this is what is unclean to you among the swarming things that swarm on the land: the rat, the mouse, the large lizard of any kind, the Mediterranean gecko, the spotted lizard, the wall gecko, the skink, the chameleon. These are the ones that are unclean to you among all the swarming things. Anyone who touches them when they die will be unclean until evening. Also, anything they fall on when they die will become unclean. Any wood vessel or garment or article of leather or sackcloth, any such vessel which is with which work is done must be immersed in water and will be unclean until evening. Then they will become clean. As for any clay vessel they fall into, everything in it will be unclean, and you must break it. Any food that may be eaten which becomes soaked with water will become unclean. Anything drinkable in any vessel will become unclean. Anything their carcasses may fall on will become unclean. A small oven or small stove must be smashed to pieces. They are unclean and will stay unclean to you. However, a spring or cistern which collects water will be clean, but one who touches their carcasses will be unclean. Now, if the carcass falls on the sowing seed which is sown, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed and such carcass falls on it, it is unclean to you. Now, if an animal that you may eat dies, whoever touches it carcass will be unclean till evening. One who eats from its carcass must wash his clothes and be unclean until evening, and whoever carries its carcasses must wash his clothes and be unclean till evening. Every swarming thing that swarms on the land is detestable. It must not be eaten. You must not eat anything that crawls on his belly, that walks on all fours, or on any number of legs, of all the swarming things that is on the land, because they are detestable. Do not make yourselves detestable by any of the swarming things. You must not defile yourself by them and become unclean by them. For I am the Lord your God, and you are to sanctify yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. You must not defile yourselves by any of the swarming things that creep on the ground, for I am the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God, and you are holy because I am holy. This is the law of the land, the of the land animals and the birds and all the living creatures that move on the water and all the creatures that swarm on the land, to distinguish between the unclean and clean, between the living creatures that may be eaten and living creatures that must not be eaten. So in this passage, the first thing I want to talk about is about Aaron's two sons that bring strange fire. And really, that word strange fire is unauthorized or not asked for. And so the idea is that Nadab and Abihu brought something that wasn't according to what God had called them to do. You know, there was a certain incense that was supposed to be made. There was a certain way things were supposed to be done. And they came in and they did things their own way. And because of that, it says the fire from the Lord came out and killed them. Now, what's up with that? Well, one of the things that, and I really, like I said, check out the Bible Project's video on holiness, and because one of the things it talks about is this idea of the sun is a good metaphor for it. And the sun is this beautiful thing. It brings us light. It makes life be able to exist on this planet with plants and stuff like that. That's how we, have warmth. But if you get too close to the sun, you burn up. And so the idea of holiness is God is so holy that when we aren't in a right place, when we aren't clean and therefore protected, we, in a sense, can burn up like from the sun. That idea that there's when astronauts go into space, they have to have special shielding on their ships from all the solar rays. I think that's a good metaphor to work with, because this idea of clean and unclean, and the way that we ritually are clean, that's a way that we make sure our hearts and our minds and our whole beings are in a right place to come to God, in the right mindset, the right body set, the right, spiritual state to come to God. It doesn't mean that being unclean ritually is sin. It just means when we're ritually unclean, we don't swagger into the presence of God in the Old Testament. That's what the point was. These two, they came in their own way, doing their own thing, and really disregarded God's holiness. And because of that, that's why the fire went out and they died. God's holiness is not something to be trifled with. That's the Old Testament. You hear a lot about the fear of God because he is holy. He is so different from anything else. He is so great, so good, that if we come to him in our own power and don't come to him humbly, there's a problem. We don't understand who God really is. Now, Jesus died for us so that we could enter the presence of God, so that we could know who God was, so that when God looks at us, he sees the righteousness of Christ. That's what Scripture says. But we still need to understand God's holiness and revere it and have a proper understanding of who God is in light of who we are as well. May we be a people who fear God. May we be a people who don't take the fact that we can come into the presence of our Creator for granted. Hope you guys are doing well. Have a wonderful day.